They told me I was useless except for babysitting. I held my tears and nodded, but what I discovered next, and the choice I made, shocked everyone in my family. I'm grateful you're here to listen. Stay with me until the end and comment which country you're watching from so I can see how far my story travels. At 70 years old, I thought I'd finally earned the right to live life on my own terms. My name is Dorothy Ashford, and I'd spent 4 decades working as head librarian at the Willowcreek Public Library system, raising 3 children mostly on my own after my husband Gerald passed from cancer when our youngest was still in high school. I'd scrimped, saved, and sacrificed to give my children everything they needed. Now, in my retirement, I had my cozy 2-bedroom house in the quiet town of Willowcreek, my beloved garden where I grew tomatoes and roses, my Thursday morning book club at the community center, and my Tuesday and Friday yoga classes with women who'd become dear friends. Life was peaceful. Simple. Mine. I should have known it wouldn't last. The call came on a rainy October evening. I was curled up with a cup of chamomile tea and a mystery novel when my phone rang. The caller ID showed my middle son's name, Benjamin Ashford. Mom, Benjamin's voice had that carefully controlled tone I recognized immediately, the voice he used when he wanted something but was trying to sound casual about it. How are you doing? We haven't talked in a few weeks. We'd actually spoken just 5 days earlier, but I didn't correct him. I'm doing wonderfully, sweetheart. Just reading by the fire. How are Vanessa and the children? That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about. Here it comes, I thought. Vanessa and I have been discussing our situation, and we've come up with an idea that we think could benefit everyone, especially you. My stomach tightened. In my experience, when someone tells you their idea will benefit you, it usually means they need something. We'd like you to move in with us, Benjamin continued. Into the lower level of our house. It's completely finished, has its own bedroom, bathroom, even a small kitchenette and separate entrance. You'd have total privacy and independence. I set down my teacup carefully. Benjamin, I appreciate the offer, but I'm very happy in my own home. I don't need to move anywhere. I know, Mom, but hear me out. The thing is, Vanessa's career is really taking off. She just made senior director at North Star Pharmaceuticals, which is incredible, but it means a lot more travel. And you know how expensive quality childcare is these days. We're paying almost $2,500 a month for Lily and Connor to be in that Montessori program. Lily was 7 and Connor was 5, bright, energetic children I loved dearly but only saw once or twice a month. That does sound expensive, I said carefully. It's not just the money, though that's definitely a factor. It's about family. The kids barely know you, Mom. They need their grandmother in their lives. And honestly, you're rattling around in that house all alone. Wouldn't it be nicer to be surrounded by family? To have purpose again? The word purpose stung more than he probably intended. As if my current life, my books, my garden, my friends, my volunteer work at the literacy center, was somehow purposeless. I have plenty of purpose in my life, Benjamin. Of course you do. I didn't mean it like that. His tone shifted slightly, becoming more urgent. Look, Mom, I'm going to be honest with you. We really need help. Vanessa's traveling is going to increase significantly with this promotion. Sometimes she'll be gone for a week at a time. My hours at the firm are brutal. I'm lucky if I get home by 8 most nights. We can't keep juggling everything. And the thought of the kids being raised by strangers at a daycare instead of by their own grandmother. He let the sentence trail off, leaving guilt hanging in the air like smoke. I closed my eyes. How long would this arrangement be for? Just temporarily. Maybe 6 months, a year at most. Just until we get into a better routine. Please, Mom. I know it's a lot to ask, but we're family. Family helps each other. That was 3 weeks ago. Now I was standing in the lower level of Benjamin and Vanessa's sprawling house in Maplewood Heights, an upscale suburb where every home had a 3-car garage and a professionally landscaped yard. The lower level was indeed finished, a large bedroom with beige carpet, a bathroom with builder-grade fixtures, and a small sitting area with a kitchenette that consisted of a mini fridge, microwave, and sink. My own entrance, as promised, leading up to the backyard through a ground-level door. It felt like a very nice prison cell. The moving truck had left 2 hours ago. My furniture from Willowcreek looked shabby and out of place in this modern space. My floral couch clashed with the gray walls. My grandmother's china cabinet seemed absurdly formal next to the utilitarian kitchenette. I was hanging the last of my clothes in the closet when I heard footsteps on the stairs that connected my lower level to the main house. A knock, then the door opened without waiting for my response. Vanessa appeared, dressed in expensive athleisure wear that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She was 34, tall and angular, with highlighted blonde hair pulled back in a high ponytail. Everything about her was sharp, her cheekbones, her voice, her eyes. "Dorothy, good, you're still unpacking. I wanted to go over the schedule with you before things get hectic." She didn't ask if I had time to talk. She simply pulled out her phone and started scrolling. "Schedule?" I asked. "For the kids. You'll need to have them ready by 7:45 for school drop-off. Benjamin leaves at 6:15 for the office, so mornings are all you. I usually leave around 7, but I'll try to get them dressed before I go when I'm in town. Pickup is at 3:15. Then there's homework time, dinner prep, baths, and bed by 8:30. I felt my exhaustion growing just listening to her. "Vanessa, I thought I was going to help out, not take over completely." She looked up from her phone with what might have been surprise, though it was hard to tell with her Botox-smoothed forehead. "Dorothy, we discussed this. You're living here rent-free. No utilities, no property taxes, no maintenance costs. In exchange, you help with the children." That was the arrangement. Benjamin said I'd be helping occasionally, not providing full-time childcare. Well, occasionally won't work. I have a business trip to Phoenix next week, 3 days. Then Chicago the week after that for a conference. Then I'm doing site visits to our facilities in Portland and San Diego. My new role requires significant travel. That's why we need you here. The way she said "need" made it sound like I was a household appliance they'd purchased to solve a problem. "I have commitments too," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "My book club meets on Thursdays. I have yoga on Tuesday and Friday mornings. I volunteer at the Literacy Center on Wednesday afternoons." Vanessa's laugh was short and sharp. "Dorothy, those are hobbies. These are your grandchildren. Surely they take priority over book club. They're not just hobbies. They're important to me. And your family isn't?" Her voice had taken on an edge. "Look, I don't want to be difficult, but let's be realistic about what you're bringing to this arrangement. You're 70 years old, retired, with no job and no real obligations. We're giving you a beautiful place to live, including you in our family life, and asking for help with childcare in return. Most grandmothers would be thrilled to spend this much time with their grandchildren." I wanted to argue, to point out that she'd framed this entire arrangement differently just 3 weeks ago, but something in her expression told me that this argument was already lost. She'd made up her mind about what my role would be, and my preferences were irrelevant. "I'll do my best," I said finally, feeling something inside me crumple. "Great. Oh, and one more thing, I prefer if you don't use the main kitchen when we're home. It's not that you can't, but I have a very specific organizational system, and I find it stressful when things get moved around. You have your kitchenette down here, which should be sufficient for your needs." She left before I could respond, her footsteps retreating back up the stairs. I sat down on my floral couch in that beige room and tried not to cry. The first week established a pattern that would define the next 2 months. I woke at 6:30 every morning to the sound of footsteps above my head, Benjamin getting ready for work, Vanessa rushing through her morning routine. By 6:45, regardless of whether I was ready or not, there would be a knock on my interior door. "Dorothy? The kids need breakfast." I would trudge upstairs in my robe and slippers to find the main floor in chaos. Lily, a sensitive 7-year-old with her father's dark hair and her mother's intense gaze, would be having a meltdown about her socks not feeling right. Connor, a rambunctious 5-year-old with seemingly infinite energy, would be racing his toy cars across the hardwood floors while making loud engine noises. Benjamin would be gulping coffee while checking his phone, already mentally at the office. Vanessa would be applying makeup in the hallway mirror, calling out instructions without looking at anyone. Dorothy, Lily only eats the organic oatmeal, not the regular kind. And Connor's going through a phase where he insists everything on his plate has to be beige or white. Yes, it's ridiculous, but pick your battles. Milk in the blue cup only, water in the red cup only. Do not mix them up or Connor will have a complete meltdown. My first morning, I made the mistake of pouring Connor's milk in a red cup. The resulting tantrum lasted 20 minutes and made us late for school. Vanessa had already left for work, but she texted me 3 times asking why I couldn't follow simple instructions. The school run became my daily ordeal. Brookshire Academy, where Lily and Connor attended, was a prestigious private school 15 minutes away. The parking lot during drop-off was a parade of luxury SUVs driven by women in designer workout clothes, all of them younger than my own children. I felt invisible among them, just another grandmother helping out, not worth noticing or acknowledging. After drop-off, would return to the house and face the wreckage, breakfast dishes piled in the sink, toys scattered across every surface, sticky fingerprints on every door and wall. Vanessa had made it clear that cleaning was part of my responsibilities. "You're here anyway," she'd said with a shrug. "Might as well keep things tidy." By the time I finished cleaning the main floor, it was almost time to start thinking about lunch and pickup preparations. My mornings vanished into domestic labor. Pickup at 3:15 was followed by a packed schedule of activities. Lily had piano lessons on Monday, ballet on Wednesday, and art class on Friday. Connor had soccer on Tuesday and Thursday, plus gymnastics on Saturday morning. I was expected to drive them to all of it, wait during the lessons, and drive them home. "Could you help with homework?" became, "You need to make sure all homework is completed perfectly." "Could you start dinner?" became, "Dinner should be on the table at 6:30 sharp, and please remember that Vanessa doesn't eat carbs after 3 p.m. and Benjamin is doing keto, but the kids need balanced meals with whole grains." My book club met on Thursday afternoons at 2. I'd been a founding member 15 years ago. For the first month after moving in, I tried to make it work. I would rush from Lily's school pickup, drop both kids at home with a snack, and speed to the community center for the meeting. But Vanessa's first business trip changed everything. She was gone to Phoenix for 4 days. Benjamin had a major audit deadline and was working until midnight every night. I was alone with Lily and Connor from dawn until bedtime, with no backup and no breaks. On Thursday, I tried to bring the kids with me to book club. It was a disaster. Connor ran wild through the community center while Lily clung to me and whined that she was bored. My friends, all retired women around my age, tried to be understanding, but the meeting was ruined. Afterward, my dear friend Patricia pulled me aside. "Dorothy, honey, you look exhausted. Are you okay?" I wanted to tell her everything, how trapped I felt, how invisible I'd become, how my own son and daughter-in-law treated me like an unpaid servant rather than a family member. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I just nodded and said I was fine, just adjusting to a new routine. I stopped going to book club after that. There was simply no way to make it work. My yoga classes went next. Vanessa scheduled Lily's ballet lesson for Wednesday at 4, which meant I had to leave to pick up the kids at 3:15, making my 3:30 yoga class impossible. When I asked if Lily's ballet could be moved to a different day, Vanessa looked at me like I'd suggested we burn the house down. That's the only class time that works with Madame Celeste, who is the best ballet instructor in Maplewood Heights. You can't possibly be suggesting we compromise Lily's artistic development for your yoga class. The way she said, "your yoga class," made it sound frivolous and selfish. My volunteer work at the literacy center became impossible too. Connor's soccer practice was Wednesday afternoons, the exact time I was supposed to be helping adults learn to read. When I explained this to Vanessa, she just shrugged. "You'll have to choose what's more important, Dorothy. Your grandchildren or reading to strangers." One by one, the threads connecting me to my old life were cut. My friends from book club stopped calling after I canceled on them too many times. My yoga instructor sent me a concerned email that I was too tired to answer. The literacy center found a replacement volunteer. I was 70 years old, and my entire existence had been reduced to serving the needs of people who barely noticed I was there. Because that was the cruelest part. Despite spending every waking hour caring for Lily and Connor, I remained essentially invisible to them. I was the person who made their meals and drove them to activities and helped with homework, but I wasn't their parent. I wasn't the one they ran to with exciting news or called for when they had nightmares. When Lily won first place in her school's art competition, she asked when her mommy would be home so she could show her the ribbon. When Connor finally mastered riding his bike without training wheels, he asked if we could wait to take the training wheels off until his daddy was home to see. I was the help. The babysitter. The warm body that kept the household functioning while the real parents lived their important, busy lives. And I was tired. Bone deep, soul-crushing tired. At 70, I simply didn't have the physical stamina for full-time childcare. My knees ached from kneeling to pick up toys. My back hurt from lifting Connor. My hands were dry and cracked from constant dishwashing. I fell asleep most nights before 9, too exhausted even to read. But the breaking point came on a Tuesday morning in late December, 2 months after I'd moved in. Vanessa was leaving for a week-long business trip to San Francisco. She was scheduled to fly out at 10 a.m., which meant she'd be gone before I needed to take the kids to school. The night before, she'd left me a 3-page typed list of instructions, scheduling requirements, and emergency contacts. I woke that morning at 6:15, earlier than usual, because I'd been having trouble sleeping. I made myself a cup of tea in my little kitchenette and was sitting in my quiet sitting area, trying to gather strength for the day ahead, when I heard Vanessa's footsteps overhead. Then I heard her coming down the stairs to my level. She knocked twice and opened the door without waiting for a response, which had become her habit. She was already dressed for travel and expensive business casual, her carry-on bag in hand. "Dorothy, good, you're awake. I need to leave for the airport in 20 minutes, so we need to go over a few things quickly." "I have your list," I said, gesturing to the 3-page document on my table. "Right, but there are some additions. Lily has a birthday party on Saturday, that's new, the invitation came yesterday. It's at Jumping Stars from 2 to 4. The address is in your email. You'll need to get a gift, nothing over $40, something educational. And Connor's teacher called yesterday. He's been acting out at school, so she wants us to implement a sticker chart at home. I started one, it's on the fridge. He gets a sticker for every hour he behaves well, and after 10 stickers he gets a reward." She continued talking, barely pausing for breath, while I tried to absorb the flood of new information. "Also, Benjamin has that conference in Dallas this weekend, so he'll be leaving Friday morning and won't be back until Sunday night. So it'll just be you and the kids for the weekend. Oh, and I almost forgot, my mother is coming by on Sunday for lunch. She'll want to see the kids. You'll need to make something nice. She's very particular about presentation. Nothing too heavy, she's watching her figure." My exhaustion crystallized into something harder. "Vanessa, you're asking me to host your mother while you and Benjamin are both out of town? You're not hosting her. You're just making lunch for her and the kids. She's family. She's your family, not mine. And I'm already going to be alone with the children for 4 days while you and Benjamin are both gone. Now you want me to entertain your mother too?" Vanessa's expression hardened. "Dorothy, I don't understand why this is such a problem. What else are you doing with your time? You're here anyway. Making lunch for one extra person isn't exactly a massive burden. I'm caring for 2 young children full-time, Vanessa. That is already a massive burden for someone my age." "Your age? You're 70, not 90. You're in perfect health. You do yoga." She paused. "Or you used to, anyway." The casual cruelty of that comment, the implication that I'd given up yoga by choice rather than because they'd made it impossible, took my breath away. I'm asking for a little consideration, I said, trying to keep my voice level. I'm asking for you to acknowledge that what you're asking of me is a lot. Vanessa checked her watch, clearly annoyed at this conversation. Fine. You want acknowledgement? Thank you, Dorothy, for helping out your family. For spending time with your grandchildren, who love you. For having a roof over your head in a beautiful home instead of being alone in your old house in Willowcreek. Is that what you needed to hear? She adjusted her bag on her shoulder. Look, I don't have time for this. I have a flight to catch. The list has everything you need. Call Benjamin if there's an emergency, though he'll be swamped at work this week, so try not to bother him unless it's truly urgent. She started to leave, then turned back. Oh, and Dorothy? I need you to really think about your attitude. You've been here 2 months, and honestly, I'm getting the sense that you're not fully committed to this arrangement. You seem to resent being asked to help out, which is honestly pretty hurtful. We're your family. We opened our home to you. The least you can do is contribute cheerfully. And then came the words that would echo in my mind for weeks. You do nothing all day except watch the children. That's literally all we ask of you. It shouldn't be this difficult. She left. I sat in my beige basement room, in the house that wasn't mine, in the life that wasn't mine, and felt something crack inside my chest. You do nothing all day except watch the children. As if caring for 2 young children wasn't work. As if the cooking, cleaning, driving, scheduling, homework help, emotional labor, and constant vigilance required to keep 2 kids safe and happy was nothing. As if I was nothing. I spent that morning on autopilot, getting Lily and Connor ready for school, making breakfast in a kitchen I wasn't supposed to use when Vanessa was home but was expected to work in when she wasn't. I drove them to school in my old Honda while surrounded by luxury SUVs. I came home and cleaned up the morning mess, then stared at Vanessa's 3-page list of requirements and instructions. And I realized something. I'd been so focused on being a good grandmother, on helping my son, on not causing problems, that I hadn't asked myself a crucial question. Why? Why did Benjamin and Vanessa, both highly paid professionals, need free childcare so desperately? Benjamin was a senior accountant at Morrison & Lloyd, one of the most prestigious firms in the state. Vanessa was now a senior director at North Star Pharmaceuticals. Their combined income had to be substantial. Yes, childcare was expensive. But was it really so expensive that 2 people in their income bracket couldn't afford it? Or was something else going on? I walked upstairs to the main level of the house. I'd been living here for 2 months but had barely explored beyond the kitchen and the children's rooms. I'd been too busy, too tired, too focused on just surviving each day. Now, in the quiet empty house with hours until pickup time, I looked around with fresh eyes. The house was beautiful, 4,500 square feet of modern elegance. Hardwood floors throughout. A gourmet kitchen with professional-grade appliances. A living room with a stone fireplace and custom built-ins. Expensive furniture in every room. Art on the walls that looked original, not prints. I walked into Benjamin's home office, feeling like an intruder in my own son's house. His desk was neat, organized, covered with tax documents and financial reports. I didn't snoop through his papers, that would be a violation I wasn't ready to commit yet. But I did notice the stack of mail on the corner of his desk. Not snooping, just observing what was in plain sight. Credit card statements from 3 different companies. A bill from Brookshire Academy. I caught a glimpse of the amount and felt my stomach drop. $38,000 per year for elementary school. For both kids, that was $76,000 annually just for school. A statement from Prestige Auto Lease for Vanessa's Mercedes. $2,200 per month. A bill from Maplewood Heights Country Club. Monthly dues of $850. I left the office and wandered through the rest of the house, really seeing it for the first time. Vanessa's walk-in closet filled with designer clothes, many with tags still attached. The basement level that Benjamin had converted into a home theater, complete with professional sound system and leather recliners. The 3-car garage housing Benjamin's BMW, Vanessa's Mercedes, and a boat they'd apparently bought last summer. A boat. In landlocked Maplewood Heights. By the time I left to pick up the kids, I had a fairly clear picture. Benjamin and Vanessa weren't struggling financially. They were drowning in it. They'd built a lifestyle they couldn't afford. The private school, the luxury cars, the country club membership, the designer clothes, the expensive house in the prestigious neighborhood. They'd constructed an elaborate facade of success and wealth, and now they were trapped inside it. And I was their solution. Free childcare saving them $4,000 per month. But it was more than that, wasn't it? Because I also cleaned their house, cooked their meals, and managed their children's schedules. I was a housekeeper, nanny, personal assistant, and chef, all rolled into one. If they'd had to pay someone to do everything I was doing, it would cost them $10,000 per month or more. I was subsidizing their unsustainable lifestyle. That evening, after the kids were in bed, I went back down to my room and opened my laptop. I was tired, exhausted, really, but I was also angry in a way I hadn't let myself feel before. I'd spent 40 years as a head librarian. I knew how to research. I knew how to find information. And I was going to find out exactly what Benjamin and Vanessa were hiding. I started with the basics. Public record searches. Financial disclosure documents. Credit reports that I had legal access to as a family member on their household insurance. What I found over the next 3 hours made my blood run cold. Benjamin and Vanessa weren't just living beyond their means. They were buried in debt. Credit cards maxed out to their limits. A home equity line of credit that they'd used to fund home renovations. Car leases they could barely afford. The country club membership that required them to spend a minimum amount on dining and events each month or lose their membership. But that wasn't the worst of it. There were irregularities in Benjamin's business accounts. Transfers that didn't make sense. Money moving between accounts in ways that seemed designed to hide something. I wasn't a forensic accountant. I couldn't prove anything yet. But I'd worked in libraries long enough to recognize the pattern of someone trying to hide a paper trail. My son, the respected accountant at Morrison & Lloyd, was doing something with his clients' money. Something he didn't want anyone to find out about. And I was pretty sure that's why they needed me here. Not just to save on childcare costs. They needed someone in the house who would be too grateful, too compliant, too dependent on them to ask questions. Someone they could control. They'd chosen wrong. I closed my laptop and sat in the dim light of my basement room. Outside, through my ground-level window, I could see the manicured lawn of their expensive house in their expensive neighborhood, where they pretended to have lives they could afford. Tomorrow, Vanessa would be in San Francisco. Benjamin would be working late at the office, doing whatever he was doing with other people's money. And I would be here, caring for their children, cleaning their house, living their lie. But not for much longer. Because I had 40 years of research experience, a lifetime of being underestimated, and absolutely nothing left to lose. It was time to find out exactly what my son and daughter-in-law were really hiding. And when I did, they were going to learn that you don't trap a librarian in your basement and expect her not to read every document in your house. Sleep was impossible that night. I lay in my bed in the basement room, staring at the ceiling while my mind raced through everything I'd discovered. The credit card statements. The expensive lifestyle they couldn't afford. The suspicious financial transfers in Benjamin's accounts. And most troubling of all, the realization that I'd been brought here not out of love or family obligation, but as a solution to a financial crisis I didn't fully understand yet. At 4:30 in the morning, I gave up on sleep. I made myself a cup of tea in my little kitchenette and sat down at my laptop. If I was going to do this, really investigate my own son, I needed to be methodical. I needed to approach this the way I'd approached complex research projects at the library, with organization, documentation, and careful attention to detail. I opened a new document and started making notes. Everything I knew so far. Everything I suspected. Every question that needed answering. The obvious questions came first. Why were Benjamin and Vanessa living so far beyond their means? What were those suspicious transfers in Benjamin's business accounts? Where was all their money actually going? But there were deeper questions too. Questions that hurt to even write down. When had my son become the kind of person who would exploit his own mother? Had he always been this way, and I'd simply been too loving, too trusting to see it? Or had something changed him? By 6 o'clock, when I heard the first stirrings from upstairs, I had a plan. Vanessa would be gone for a week. Benjamin would be working late every night, consumed by his audit deadline. I would have access to the house, to their files, to their computers. I would have time. I just had to be smart about it. Careful. Because if they caught me snooping, they could kick me out. And then I'd never know the truth. The morning routine proceeded as always. I got Lily and Connor ready for school, made breakfast in the kitchen I wasn't supposed to use, packed their lunches with the organic snacks Vanessa insisted upon. Benjamin appeared briefly, grabbed a coffee, kissed his kids on the forehead without really looking at them, and left for the office by 6:45. The question caught me off guard. Because that's where your parents set up a room for me, sweetheart. But why don't you live in one of the upstairs bedrooms? We have a guest room that nobody uses. Lily, more perceptive than her younger brother, shot him a look. Connor, don't be rude. Mommy says Grandma Dorothy likes having her own space. I do like having my own space, I lied, starting the car. It gives me privacy. But Connor wasn't done. Emma's grandma lives with them, and she has a room upstairs next to Emma's room. Emma says her grandma reads her stories every night and they have tea parties on weekends. Something in my chest ached. That sounds lovely. Can we have tea parties, Grandma Dorothy? Maybe this weekend, I said, though I knew that this weekend I'd be too busy investigating their parents' financial crimes to have tea parties. The thought made me feel guilty, but I pushed it away. If Benjamin and Vanessa were doing what I suspected, the children deserved to know the truth eventually. They deserved better than parents who were criminals. After drop-off, I sat in my car in the Brookshire Academy parking lot for a long moment, gathering my courage. Then I drove home and let myself back into the house. It felt different now that I knew I was going to violate their privacy. The house seemed to watch me as I climbed the stairs from my basement room to the main level. I half expected alarms to go off, cameras to catch me, some security system I didn't know about to alert Benjamin that I was snooping. But nothing happened. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of a neighbor's lawn service. I started in Benjamin's home office. It was the logical place. If he was doing something illegal with client money, there would be evidence in his work files. I sat down at his desk, feeling like an intruder, and opened the drawers one by one. The first drawer contained office supplies. Nothing interesting. The second held tax documents for the house, their personal returns from the last 3 years. I photographed each page with my phone, not sure what I was looking for but trusting that patterns would emerge. Their income was substantial. Benjamin made $185,000 per year at Morrison & Lloyd. Vanessa made $160,000 at North Star Pharmaceuticals, and with her recent promotion to senior director, that would increase to $195,000. Combined, they were earning well over $300,000 annually. Yet according to their tax returns, they claimed almost no savings. No significant investment income. Nothing set aside for retirement beyond the minimal 401k contributions their employers required. Where was all that money going? The third drawer was locked. I tried it several times, hoping it might just be stuck, but no, it was definitely locked. I searched the desk for a key but found nothing. I'd have to come back to that. I moved to Benjamin's filing cabinet. More tax documents. Insurance policies. Mortgage paperwork. The house had cost $875,000 3 years ago. Their mortgage payment was over $4,500 per month, not including property taxes and insurance. Then I found a file labeled HELOC in Benjamin's neat handwriting. Home equity line of credit. I pulled it out and started reading. They'd taken out a $200,000 line of credit against the house 18 months ago. The paperwork said it was for home improvements and debt consolidation. But when I looked at the withdrawal history, the money hadn't gone to contractors or credit card companies. It had been transferred to an account at a different bank. An account in Benjamin's name alone. An account that wasn't listed on their joint tax returns. My hands started shaking. This was it. This was evidence of something wrong. I photographed every page of the Hellick file, then carefully put it back exactly where I'd found it. I was about to move on when I noticed another file tucked behind the Hellick papers. This one was labeled LLC Documents. I pulled it out and started reading. 18 months ago, Benjamin had formed a limited liability company called Ashford Consulting Services. The company was registered to their home address. Benjamin was listed as the sole owner and operator. The business license said it provided financial consulting and investment advisory services. But Benjamin already worked full-time at Morrison & Lloyd. When would he have time to run a consulting business? Unless he wasn't actually running a legitimate consulting business. Unless this was a shell company designed to hide money. I kept reading through the file. There were bank statements for the Ashford Consulting Services business account. Deposits ranging from $5,000 to $25,000, coming in regularly every month. The deposit sources were labeled with codes I didn't recognize: TRS 47, CLT 89, INV 23. And the withdrawals were even more interesting. Large cash withdrawals. Transfers to cryptocurrency exchanges. Payments to luxury car dealers, jewelry stores, and high-end retailers. Benjamin wasn't running a consulting business. He was running money through a shell company to hide income from somewhere. Income that he was using to fund their expensive lifestyle without reporting it properly on taxes. But where was the money coming from? I thought about his job at Morrison & Lloyd. He was a senior accountant who handled wealthy clients' finances. Clients who trusted him with their investments, their tax planning, their financial futures. The possibility made me feel sick. Was my son stealing from his clients? I photographed every document in the LLC file, my hands shaking so badly that several photos came out blurry and I had to retake them. Then I carefully put everything back in order. I was about to leave the office when I noticed Benjamin's laptop sitting on his desk, closed but plugged in. He usually took it to work with him, but he must have forgotten it in his rush this morning. I shouldn't. I knew I shouldn't. Accessing his computer without permission crossed a line from concerned investigation to actual snooping. But if I was right about what he was doing, this wasn't just about my hurt feelings anymore. This was about criminal activity. This was about innocent people whose money he might be stealing. I opened the laptop. It prompted me for a password. I tried his birthday. Nothing. Vanessa's birthday. Nothing. The kids' birthdays. Nothing. Then I tried the password I'd seen written on a sticky note in his desk drawer when I was looking for the filing cabinet key, Hawks 2019. His favorite football team and the year they won the championship. The laptop unlocked. I was in. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I had maybe 5 hours before I needed to leave for school pickup. 5 hours to search through Benjamin's computer and find out what he was really doing. I started with his email. He had multiple accounts, his work email, a personal Gmail, and a third account I didn't recognize, bashford.consulting@protonmail.com. That must be for the shell company. The ProtonMail account was a revelation. Hundreds of emails, all encrypted, all using language that was carefully vague but still clearly incriminating. The transfer you requested has been completed. The funds are now available in the agreed-upon account. Per our discussion, I've moved $15,000 from the trust account to the consulting account. Everything is properly documented as management fees. Mr. Weatherby called asking about his investment returns. I provided the standard report showing 8% annual growth. He seemed satisfied. I felt cold spreading through my body as I read email after email. Benjamin was stealing from his clients at Morrison & Lloyd. He was moving money out of their investment accounts, funneling it through his shell company, and providing fake reports to cover up the theft. It was systematic. It was ongoing. And it was massive. I opened his spreadsheet files and found detailed records of every client he was stealing from. There were 12 of them, all elderly, all wealthy, all trusting their finances to the friendly accountant at the prestigious firm. Margaret Weatherby, $127,000 taken over 18 months. Harold Chin, $89,000 taken over 12 months. Patricia and Robert Dunmore, $156,000 taken over 2 years. The list went on. In total, Benjamin had stolen over $1.2 million from his clients. I had to grip the edge of the desk to keep from being sick. This was my son. The baby I'd rocked to sleep. The little boy who'd cried when we had to give away our puppy because his father was allergic. The young man who'd been so idealistic about wanting to help people with their finances. He'd become a thief. A criminal who preyed on elderly people who trusted him. And Vanessa knew. She had to know. The money was paying for her Mercedes, her designer clothes, her country club membership. She was complicit in every theft. I spent the next 2 hours documenting everything. I photographed the spreadsheets showing which clients he'd stolen from. I forwarded key emails to my own account, using an anonymous forwarding service so there would be no record of where they'd gone. I copied files to a USB drive I'd brought from my room. By the time I finished, I had enough evidence to send Benjamin to prison for decades. The question was, what was I going to do with it? I closed the laptop and sat in Benjamin's expensive office chair, in his expensive house, paid for with stolen money. Money taken from people like Margaret Weatherby and Harold Chin. People who probably weren't that different from me, older adults who'd worked hard, saved carefully, and trusted the wrong person with their life savings. My phone alarm went off, startling me. 2:30. Time to leave for school pickup. I left Benjamin's office exactly as I'd found it, went downstairs to my basement room, and hid the USB drive in a box of my old library books. Then I grabbed my purse and headed out. The drive to Brookshire Academy was a blur. I kept seeing those numbers in my head. $1.2 million. 12 victims. Years of systematic theft. At pickup, I waited in the car line with all the other grandmothers and nannies and occasional parents who had flexible work schedules. I watched Lily and Connor emerge from the school building, backpacks bouncing, and felt a wave of sadness. They were innocent in all this. They didn't know their parents were criminals. They didn't know the beautiful life they were living was built on stolen money and their grandmother's exploitation. What would happen to them when the truth came out? "Grandma Dorothy, you look sad," Lily said when she climbed into the car. She was perceptive, that child. More perceptive than a 7-year-old should have to be. "Just tired, sweetheart. How was school?" "Good. We started learning about fractions in math. Mrs. Henderson says I'm really good at them." "That's wonderful. I'm so proud of you." Connor was already rambling about something that happened at recess, something about a boy named Lucas and a soccer ball and a puddle. I made appropriate listening noises while my mind spun through scenarios. Option 1, I could go to the police right now. Hand over all the evidence I'd gathered. Benjamin would be arrested. He'd lose his job, his license, probably his freedom. The clients would get their money back, or at least whatever could be recovered. Justice would be served. But Lily and Connor would lose their father. Possibly both parents if Vanessa was charged as an accomplice. The children would be traumatized, their lives destroyed. Option 2, I could confront Benjamin privately. Give him a chance to confess, to return the money, to make this right before involving authorities. Maybe he'd gotten in over his head. Maybe he was desperate and had made terrible choices but could still be redeemed. But would he listen? Or would he just be angry that I'd snooped through his files? Would he kick me out, and then I'd have no leverage and no way to help the victims? Option 3, I could do nothing. Pretend I never found out. Go back to being the invisible grandmother in the basement, taking care of the children, keeping my mouth shut. But that would make me complicit. That would make me as bad as Vanessa, enjoying the benefits of stolen money while pretending not to know where it came from. We got home and I went through the motions of the afternoon routine. Snacks. Homework. I helped Lily with her math worksheet about fractions while Connor built an elaborate fortress out of couch cushions. Dinner prep. I made chicken tenders and steamed broccoli because those were the only vegetables Connor would eat. Benjamin came home at 8:30, long after the kids were in bed. I heard him moving around upstairs, getting food from the kitchen, settling into his office. The house went quiet except for the sound of him typing on his computer. I sat in my basement room with the evidence on my USB drive and tried to figure out what kind of person I wanted to be. The answer came around midnight, after hours of agonizing deliberation. I couldn't go to the police. Not yet. Not without giving Benjamin a chance to explain, to fix this, to be better than the person he'd apparently become. But I also couldn't do nothing. I would confront him. Tomorrow night, after the kids were in bed. I would show him what I'd found and give him a choice, make this right, or I would make sure the authorities knew everything. He was my son, but he was also a criminal. And I loved him, but I loved justice more. With that decision made, I finally fell into an uneasy sleep, dreaming of spreadsheets and stolen money and the look on my son's face when he realized his mother had discovered his secrets. The next day passed in a strange fog of normalcy. I got the kids ready for school, drove them to Brookshire Academy, came home and cleaned the breakfast mess. I made beds that weren't mine in a house that wasn't mine while thinking about the conversation I would have with Benjamin that night. At 2:00, my phone rang. Vanessa's mother, Claudette. "Dorothy, dear, I'm calling about Sunday lunch. I wanted to make sure you remembered I was coming. I'd completely forgotten." "Of course, Claudette. What time would be good for you?" "Around 1. And I have some dietary restrictions I need to make you aware of. I'm doing a cleanse right now, so nothing with gluten, dairy, or refined sugar. And I prefer organic vegetables, lightly steamed. Oh, and I'm avoiding nightshades this month." I pulled up my notes app and started typing. No gluten, dairy, sugar, or nightshades. Organic vegetables, lightly steamed. Got it. And make sure the children are presentable. I'll be taking photos for my social media. Vanessa tells me you've been wonderful with them. The compliment felt hollow. Vanessa had probably told her mother that I was useful, that I knew my place, that I was appropriately grateful for the opportunity to serve. "I do my best," I said. "I'm sure you do. See you Sunday at 1. Oh, and Dorothy? Make sure the house is tidy. I have quite a large following on Instagram, and I like to showcase beautiful family moments." She hung up without saying goodbye. I stared at my phone, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. I was supposed to care for the children all week while both parents were out of town, then host Vanessa's mother for a picture-perfect lunch on Sunday, all while carrying the knowledge that I was living in a house paid for with stolen money. The afternoon routine proceeded as always. School pickup, homework help, dinner preparation. Benjamin came home at 9, even later than the night before. He looked exhausted, his tie loosened, his face drawn. "Mom, is there any dinner left?" he asked, barely glancing at me. "I saved you a plate. It's in the fridge." He heated it up in the microwave and ate standing at the kitchen counter, scrolling through his phone. This was my chance. The kids were asleep. We were alone. I could confront him right now. But looking at him, at his tired face and slumped shoulders, I lost my nerve. "Long day?" I asked instead. "Brutal. This audit is killing me. I've been working 14-hour days all week." He rubbed his eyes. "Thank God you're here with the kids. I don't know how we'd manage otherwise." The irony of that statement, that he was grateful for my unpaid labor while funding his lifestyle with stolen money, was almost too much. "Benjamin, I need to talk to you about something." He looked up from his phone, finally giving me his full attention. "What's wrong?" Are the kids okay? The kids are fine. It's about your finances. His expression changed instantly, becoming guarded. My finances? Mom, I appreciate your concern, but Vanessa and I have everything under control. Do you? Because I've seen your credit card statements, Benjamin. I've seen the bills. You're living well beyond your means. That's really none of your business. His voice had taken on an edge. You're living here as our guest. That doesn't give you the right to snoop through our private papers. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for an envelope in your office and I saw the bills. I'm worried about you. It was a partial truth. Enough to explain how I'd seen some things without revealing the full extent of my investigation. Benjamin set down his fork, his jaw tight. Mom, I'm a senior accountant at one of the best firms in the state. I think I can manage my own finances without input from my retired mother. The condescension in his tone stung. I'm just trying to help. If you want to help, focus on the kids and leave the financial decisions to the adults. He picked up his plate and headed for the sink. I'm going to bed. I have another long day tomorrow. He left the kitchen without another word, leaving me standing there with my unspoken accusations dying in my throat. I'd chickened out. I'd had the perfect opportunity to confront him, and instead I'd backed down at the first sign of resistance. Back in my basement room, I looked at the USB drive hidden in my bookshelf and felt ashamed of my own cowardice. Benjamin had stolen over $1 million from vulnerable elderly people, and I couldn't even work up the courage to tell him I knew. But maybe direct confrontation wasn't the right approach. Maybe I needed a different strategy. I opened my laptop and started searching for information about financial elder abuse. About what happened to people who stole from their clients. About the process for reporting suspected fraud. What I learned made my situation both clearer and more complicated. If I reported Benjamin to the police, they would investigate. But investigations took time, and in the meantime, he could move money, destroy evidence, flee. The victims might never get their money back. If I reported him to Morrison and Lloyd, the firm would conduct an internal investigation. They'd want to avoid scandal, which meant they might try to handle it quietly. Benjamin might lose his job but avoid criminal charges. Again, the victims might not be made whole. What I needed was leverage. A way to force Benjamin to return the money and face consequences without destroying his children's lives in the process. And then I had an idea. An idea that made me feel calculating and cold but also righteously angry. I would gather more evidence. I would document everything. And then I would approach Benjamin not with accusations, but with a deal, return all the stolen money to his clients. Resign from Morrison and Lloyd. Seek therapy and make amends. Do all of this voluntarily, before anyone else found out. If he refused, then I'd have no choice but to go to the authorities with everything I'd found. It wasn't perfect justice. Benjamin would avoid prison, which he probably deserved. But the victims would get their money back. The children would keep their father. And maybe, just maybe, Benjamin would learn that his actions had consequences. The next 3 days were a strange dance of deception. I took care of Lily and Connor during the day, playing the role of devoted grandmother. I helped with homework, made nutritious meals, drove them to activities, and tucked them into bed with stories. But every moment I had alone, I was gathering evidence. I went through every file in Benjamin's office, photographing documents and receipts. I accessed his laptop again when he forgot it at home, copying more emails and financial records. I even managed to pick the lock on his locked desk drawer using a technique I'd learned from a mystery novel. It turned out to be laughably easy. Inside the drawer, I found the real smoking gun, a second phone. A burner phone with a single contact saved, v. Client Services. The text message history on that phone showed Benjamin coordinating with someone, probably another corrupt employee at Morrison and Lloyd, to cover up the theft. They discussed which clients were paying the least attention to their accounts. They planned how to forge documents and create fake investment reports. It was a conspiracy, and Benjamin was right in the middle of it. By Friday evening, I had enough evidence to send multiple people to prison. I had documentation of every theft, every fake report, every coordinated lie. It was all backed up in 3 different places: the USB drive hidden in my room, a cloud storage account under a fake name, and copies mailed to my old address in Willowcreek with instructions from my friend Patricia to keep them safe without looking at them. I was ready. Saturday passed in a blur of children's activities. Connor had soccer in the morning, which meant getting up at 6:30 to have him dressed, fed, and at the field by 8. Lily had ballet in the afternoon, which meant another round of outfit changes and snack packing and driving across town. By the time we got home at 5, I was exhausted. But I still had to prepare for Sunday's lunch with Claudette. I needed to plan a menu that met her impossible dietary restrictions while also appealing to 2 young children. I needed to clean the house to Instagram-worthy perfection. I needed to make sure Lily and Connor had appropriate outfits for the photos Claudette would inevitably take. That night, after the kids were in bed, I sat down at my little kitchenette table and made the menu plan. Quinoa salad with organic vegetables. Grilled chicken with herbs. Fresh fruit arranged artfully. Sparkling water with lemon slices. It felt absurd, planning this perfect lunch in a house built on theft, for a woman who valued Instagram aesthetics over authenticity. But I did it anyway, because that's what was expected of the useful grandmother who lived in the basement. Sunday morning arrived with gray skies threatening rain. I got up early and started cooking, preparing everything from scratch because Claudette would know if I tried to take shortcuts. Lily and Connor came downstairs around 8, still in their pajamas, rubbing sleep from their eyes. "Is today the day Grandma Claudette comes?" Lily asked, her voice small. "Yes, sweetheart. She'll be here at 1. Do we have to take pictures? Your grandmother likes to remember special moments." Lily made a face. "She's not our real grandmother. She's Mommy's mother. You're our real grandmother." The statement caught me off guard. I'd assumed the children barely noticed me, that I was just the invisible caretaker in the background of their lives. "You're both my grandmothers," Connor said pragmatically. "But Grandma Claudette smells like flowers and talks a lot, and Grandma Dorothy makes good snacks and doesn't make us take pictures all the time." I laughed despite everything. "Thank you for that assessment, Connor. Now go get dressed. I laid out clothes for both of you on your beds." "The fancy clothes?" Lily groaned. "The nice clothes. There's a difference." They trudged upstairs to change while I continued cooking. By noon, the house was spotless and the food was ready. I'd even found fresh flowers in the garden and arranged them in a vase on the dining room table. At exactly 1 o'clock, Claudette arrived. She swept in wearing white linen and oversized sunglasses, carrying a designer handbag and trailing a cloud of expensive perfume. She was 62 but looked younger, thanks to what I suspected was extensive plastic surgery. Everything about her was carefully curated, from her highlighted hair to her manicured nails. "Dorothy. The house looks lovely. And the children." She enveloped Lily and Connor in air kisses that didn't actually touch their cheeks. "So precious. Come here, let Grandma get some photos." The next 20 minutes were devoted to Claudette's photo shoot. Lily and Connor standing by the fireplace. Sitting on the couch. Playing with toys they never usually touched. Each pose was carefully arranged, carefully lit, carefully filtered before being posted to Claudette's Instagram with captions about "blessed family time" and "loving my beautiful grandchildren." Finally, we sat down to eat. Claudette examined every dish with the intensity of a food critic. "Is this quinoa organic?" "Lily, darling, sit up straight for the camera." "Dorothy, could you move that water glass? It's creating glare in my shot." I moved the water glass. Lunch proceeded with Claudette dominating the conversation, talking about her yoga retreat in Sedona, her new spiritual advisor, her latest dietary discovery. Lily and Connor ate quietly, having learned that Grandma Claudette's visits were performances where they were props, not participants. "So Dorothy," Claudette said after finishing her carefully photographed meal, "Vanessa tells me you've been such a help with the children." She's so grateful. I'm happy to spend time with my grandchildren. Of course. And it must be so nice for you, having a purpose again at your age. Retirement can be so lonely. The condescension was breathtaking. As if my entire life's value could be reduced to being useful to Vanessa. Actually, I was quite content in Willowcreek before I moved here. Claudette smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. Oh, I'm sure you were. But this is so much better, isn't it? Being part of a family, contributing something meaningful. Vanessa says you've really found your place here. Your place. The words echoed what Vanessa herself had said. Everyone seemed very invested in me knowing my place. It's certainly been an adjustment, I said carefully. Well, adjustment is part of life. When Vanessa was younger, I had to make adjustments too. Sacrifices. That's what mothers do. She reached over and squeezed my hand, a gesture that was probably meant to be warm but felt calculated. We put our children first, always. After Claudette left, taking one more round of photos by her Mercedes before departing, I cleaned up the lunch dishes while the children played upstairs. My hands moved automatically, scrubbing plates and wiping counters, while my mind spun through everything that had happened. Claudette's words kept echoing in my head. That's what mothers do. We put our children first, always. But what did putting your child first mean when that child was a criminal? Did it mean protecting them from consequences? Or did it mean holding them accountable, even when it hurt? I thought about Margaret Weatherby and Harold Shen and the other victims whose money Benjamin had stolen. They were someone's parents too. Someone's grandparents. They deserved to have someone put them first. That night, after the children were asleep, I made my decision. Monday morning, as soon as I dropped Lily and Connor at school, I was going to Morrison and Lloyd. I was going to ask to speak to the managing partner. And I was going to tell them everything. Benjamin would hate me. Vanessa would hate me. I would probably never see my grandchildren again. But I would be able to look at myself in the mirror. I would know that I'd chosen justice over family loyalty, truth over comfortable lies. And maybe that's what being a mother really meant, not sacrificing yourself endlessly for your children, but teaching them through your actions that some things matter more than blood. Even if it cost me everything. Monday morning arrived with cruel brightness. Sunshine streamed through my basement window, illuminating the dust motes floating in the air and making everything look deceptively cheerful. I'd barely slept, lying awake most of the night rehearsing what I would say to the managing partner at Morrison and Lloyd. How do you tell someone that one of their senior accountants has been systematically stealing from elderly clients for over 18 months? I got Lily and Connor ready for school on autopilot, my mind already at the accounting firm, already having conversations that hadn't happened yet. The children were unusually quiet at breakfast, picking at their organic oatmeal and glancing at me with concerned expressions. Grandma Dorothy, are you sad? Connor asked, his spoon halfway to his mouth. I forced a smile. No, sweetheart. Just tired. Grown-ups get tired sometimes. Daddy's always tired, Lily observed. And Mommy's always busy. The innocence of that statement broke something in me. These children had normalized their parents' absence, had accepted that adults were perpetually exhausted and distracted. What kind of life was that for a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old? Tell you what, I said impulsively. When I pick you up from school today, let's go get ice cream. Just because. Their faces lit up. Really? Connor bounced in his seat. Can I get chocolate with gummy bears? You can get whatever you want. It was a small act of rebellion. Vanessa had strict rules about sugar intake and approved snacks, but it felt significant. If today went the way I expected, it might be one of my last chances to give these children a happy memory with their grandmother. The drive to Brookshire Academy was beautiful. Fall leaves were turning gold and crimson, and the wealthy neighborhoods of Maplewood Heights looked like something from a magazine spread. Perfect houses, perfect lawns, perfect lives built on foundations that would crumble the moment anyone looked too closely. After drop-off, I sat in my car in the parking lot for a long moment, gathering my courage. Then I pulled out my phone and called Morrison and Lloyd. Morrison and Lloyd, how may I direct your call? I need to speak with the managing partner, please. It's urgent. May I ask what this is regarding? It's regarding financial irregularities involving one of your senior accountants. I have evidence of client fund theft. There was a pause. Please hold. Classical music played for what felt like an eternity. I watched other parents and grandparents drive away from the school, heading back to their normal lives where they probably weren't about to destroy their own son's career and freedom. This is Richard Morrison. Who am I speaking with? His voice was deep and authoritative, the voice of someone accustomed to being taken seriously. My name is Dorothy Ashford. I'm the mother of Benjamin Ashford, one of your senior accountants. Another pause, heavier this time. I see. And you mentioned evidence of theft? Yes. Over $1 million stolen from 12 elderly clients over the past 18 months. I have documentation, bank records, emails, fake investment reports. Everything. Mrs. Ashford, these are serious allegations. Are you certain about what you're claiming? I'm certain. I found the evidence in my son's home office. He's been running money through a shell company called Ashford Consulting Services. He's been providing fake reports to clients while moving their money into his personal accounts. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. Mrs. Ashford, I need you to come to our offices immediately. Don't speak to anyone else about this, don't tell your son you've called. Can you be here within the hour? Yes. I can be there in 30 minutes. Ask for me at the front desk. And Mrs. Ashford? Thank you for coming forward. I know this couldn't have been easy. I ended the call and sat in my car, trembling. It was done. I'd set everything in motion, and there was no taking it back now. The drive to Morrison and Lloyd took me into the heart of downtown Maplewood, to a gleaming glass building that screamed prestige and success. I felt small and old as I walked through the marble lobby in my sensible shoes and department store clothes, carrying a tote bag that contained the USB drive with all the evidence. Richard Morrison met me in a private conference room. He was in his 60s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, wearing a suit that probably cost more than I spent on clothes in a year. With him was a woman he introduced as Patricia Vance, the firm's chief compliance officer, and a younger man named David Chen, their head of security. Mrs. Ashford, thank you for coming in, Morrison said, gesturing to a chair. I want you to know that we take these allegations extremely seriously. Can you walk us through what you discovered? For the next 2 hours, I laid it all out. I showed them the USB drive with the copied files. I explained how I'd found the initial evidence, how I'd investigated further, how I'd documented everything. I showed them the spreadsheet with the 12 victims' names and the amounts stolen from each. I showed them the emails coordinating the cover-up. I showed them everything. Patricia Vance's expression grew darker with each revelation. Jesus Christ, she muttered, flipping through the printed documents I'd brought. Margaret Weatherby is one of our oldest clients. Her husband died last year. She trusted Benjamin with her entire retirement. How did we miss this? Morrison asked, though the question seemed directed more at himself than anyone else. We have oversight procedures, audit protocols. Benjamin knew those protocols, I said quietly. He helped design some of them. He knew exactly how to work around them. David Chen, who'd been typing notes on his laptop, looked up. Mrs. Ashford, I have to ask, why didn't you go to the police first? Most people would have called the authorities immediately. Because he's my son, I said simply. I wanted to give your firm a chance to handle this properly, to make sure the victims get their money back. If I'd gone to the police first, Benjamin would have been arrested immediately, but the money might never be recovered. This way, you have a chance to freeze accounts, track the funds, make the victims whole. Morrison nodded slowly. That was the right call. We'll conduct an emergency audit today. We'll freeze all accounts Benjamin has access to. And we'll be contacting the police and the State Financial Crimes Division. This will be handled properly, Mrs. Ashford. I give you my word. What about the victims? I asked. What happens to people like Margaret Weatherby? The firm will make them whole, Morrison said firmly. Every dollar stolen will be returned, with interest. This happened under our watch. We failed to catch it. We'll take responsibility. Patricia leaned forward. Mrs. Ashford, I need to ask you something personal. What made you come forward? This is your son. You must have known this would destroy his career, possibly send him to prison. Most parents would have tried to protect their child. I thought about that question. About Lily and Connor eating breakfast this morning. About Margaret Weatherby trusting the nice accountant with her dead husband's life insurance money. About all the nights I'd lain awake in my basement room, feeling invisible and used. I came forward because someone had to, I said. Because those victims deserve justice more than my son deserves protection from the consequences of his choices. And because I realized that the best thing I could do for my grandchildren was teach them, even if they never know it, that integrity matters more than family loyalty. Morrison stood and extended his hand. Mrs. Ashford, you did the right thing. I know that's probably cold comfort right now, but you should know that you've saved people from losing everything. Margaret Weatherby, Harold Shin, the others, they would have been financially ruined if this had continued. I shook his hand, feeling simultaneously righteous and heartbroken. What happens now? I asked. Now we execute the emergency audit. We'll have our forensic accountants go through everything today. By this evening, we'll have enough to confront Benjamin. We'll ask him to resign immediately and cooperate with returning the funds. If he does, we'll advocate for a plea deal that might keep him out of prison. If he doesn't. Morrison's expression hardened. Then he'll face the full consequences. And me? What should I do? Go home. Act normal. Don't tell Benjamin or his wife that you've been here. We'll handle the confrontation. You've done your part. I left Morrison and Lloyd feeling like I was floating outside my body. The sunshine seemed too bright, the traffic too loud, the world too normal for what I'd just done. I just ended my son's career. Possibly sent him to prison. Definitely destroyed any relationship we might have had left. I drove back toward Maplewood Heights, but instead of going to Benjamin's house, I found myself driving to my old home in Willowcreek. I hadn't been back since moving out 3 months ago. My neighbor Mrs. Peterson was watering her garden next door, and she waved when she saw my car. Dorothy. Oh, it's so good to see you. How are you? How's living with your son? I parked and walked over to her fence. Mrs. Peterson was 75, a widow who'd lived next door for 20 years. She knew me better than my own son did. I'm okay, Helen. Just visiting for a bit. She studied my face with the keen perception of someone who'd lived long enough to recognize pain when she saw it. You look exhausted, dear. Are they working you too hard? And suddenly, standing in front of my old house in the neighborhood where I'd lived for decades, I started crying. Not quiet tears, but deep, body-shaking sobs that I'd been holding back for months. Helen immediately dropped her watering can and came through the gate, pulling me into a hug. Oh, honey. Come inside. Let me make you some tea. In Helen's cozy kitchen, surrounded by the familiar smell of her lavender potpourri and the comfortable clutter of a well-lived-in home, I told her everything. About how Benjamin and Vanessa had manipulated me into moving in. About being treated like an unpaid nanny. About discovering the theft. About going to Morrison and Lloyd this morning. Helen listened without interrupting, occasionally refilling my tea, her weathered hand patting mine. Dorothy, she said when I'd finished, you know what you did took more courage than most people have, right? You chose principle over comfort. That's rare. I just destroyed my relationship with my son. No, dear. He destroyed it when he decided to steal from vulnerable people and exploit his own mother. You just refused to enable him anymore. But the children, Lily and Connor. They're innocent in all this. They'll suffer. Children are resilient. And honestly, They'll be better off learning now that actions have consequences than growing up thinking their parents can do anything without repercussions. Helen squeezed my hand. You did the right thing. Now you need to figure out what comes next for you. What came next? I hadn't thought that far ahead. I can't go back to that house, I realized aloud. Once Benjamin finds out what I did, he'll never want to see me again. And even if he would, I can't live there anymore. I can't go back to being invisible. Then don't, Helen said simply. Come home, Dorothy. Your house is still yours. It's been waiting for you. My house. My garden with the tomatoes and roses. My book club and yoga classes and volunteer work at the literacy center. My life. I need to pack my things, I said. And I need to pick up the children from school. I promised them ice cream. Helen smiled. Then you'd better get going. But Dorothy? You're welcome here anytime. And I'm proud of you. I drove back to Maplewood Heights with a strange sense of clarity. I would pick up Lily and Connor. I would take them for ice cream as promised. I would spend one last afternoon being their grandmother. And then, when Benjamin came home and Morrison and Lloyd delivered their ultimatum, I would pack my belongings and leave. I would reclaim my life. At 3:15, I was waiting in the Brookshire Academy pickup line. Lily and Connor emerged from the building with their backpacks and bright faces, still innocent of everything that was about to change. Ice cream time. Connor shouted, climbing into his car seat. Where are we going? Lily asked. There's a place in Willowcreek I used to take your dad when he was little. Best ice cream in the state. Want to see it? The drive to Willowcreek felt like traveling back in time. I showed them the library where I'd worked for 40 years. The park where I used to take Benjamin and his siblings. The community center where my book club met. This is where you used to live, Grandma Dorothy? Lily asked, looking around at the modest houses and tree-lined streets. This is where I still live, sweetheart. This is my home. At Sweetwater Ice Cream, a local shop I'd been going to since before Benjamin was born, Connor got his chocolate with gummy bears and Lily got mint chip. I got butter pecan and we sat at a picnic table outside, watching the autumn leaves fall and talking about everything except what was coming. Grandma Dorothy, Lily said, her ice cream already melting down her hand, are you going to live with us forever? The question pierced my heart. No, sweetie. I'm going to go back to living in my own house. But why? Don't you like living with us? How could I explain this to a 7-year-old? I love spending time with you and Connor. But grown-ups need their own space. And I have a life here in Willowcreek, friends and activities and my garden. I miss all of that. Will we still see you? I hope so, sweetheart. I hope so very much. But I knew the truth. Once Benjamin found out what I'd done, he would never let me see these children again. This afternoon, this ice cream, these moments of normalcy, they were goodbye. We got back to Maplewood Heights at 5:30. I made the children dinner, chicken nuggets and apple slices, breaking all of Vanessa's nutritional rules because at this point, what did it matter? We played games until bedtime. I read them extra long stories. I tucked them in with extra tight hugs. I love you both so much, I whispered to each of them. Remember that, okay? No matter what happens, your Grandma Dorothy loves you. We love you too, Lily murmured, already half asleep. I went down to my basement room and started packing. I didn't have much, I'd only brought the essentials when I moved in. Clothes, books, a few personal items. Everything fit into 3 suitcases and a few boxes. At 8:30, I heard Benjamin's car in the driveway. Then voices upstairs, angry voices. Benjamin shouting. A woman's voice responding, Patricia Vance from Morrison and Lloyd. More shouting. Then footsteps thundering down the stairs to my basement. Benjamin burst through the door without knocking, his face red with fury. What did you do? What the hell did you do? I stood my ground. I did what I had to do. They're accusing me of theft. They have all these documents, these emails. They said you gave them everything. His voice broke. Mom, how could you? I'm your son. And those 12 people you stole from are someone's parents. Someone's grandparents. They trusted you, Benjamin. I was going to pay it back. I just needed time. The investments went bad, and I had to cover the losses. You weren't going to pay it back. You were spending it on cars and country clubs and a lifestyle you couldn't afford. I kept my voice steady, even though my heart was breaking. You stole over $1 million from elderly people who trusted you. And you brought me here to be your unpaid servant so you could save money while you funded your fraud. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. I gave you a place to live. I gave you purpose. You gave me exploitation. You and Vanessa treated me like hired help, not family. You expected me to sacrifice everything, my home, my friends, my life, to subsidize your criminal activities. You're my mother. You're supposed to support me. I'm supporting what's right. There's a difference. Benjamin's rage crumpled into something that looked like despair. He sank onto my bed, his head in his hands. They're going to file charges. Patricia said if I cooperate and return the money, they might advocate for probation instead of prison time. But I'll lose my license. My career. Everything. You should have thought of that before you stole from people who couldn't afford to lose their savings. He looked up at me with tears in his eyes. What am I supposed to tell Lily and Connor? That their grandmother destroyed their father's life? The accusation hung in the air between us. Tell them the truth, I said quietly. Tell them that their father made terrible choices and their grandmother chose to do the right thing instead of the easy thing. Tell them that sometimes people we love disappoint us, but that doesn't mean we stop holding them accountable. I'll never forgive you for this. I know. But I'll be able to live with myself. Can you say the same? He stood up, wiping his eyes. You need to leave. Tonight. I want you out of this house. I'm already packed. I gestured to my suitcases and boxes, already stacked by the door. Benjamin looked at them, then at me, and something in his expression shifted. Maybe he realized that I'd known this was coming. That I'd chosen justice even knowing it would cost me everything. The kids, he started. Tell them I had to go home to Willowcreek. Tell them I love them. Tell them whatever you want, Benjamin. But tell them something true for once. I picked up my first suitcase and walked past him, up the stairs, through the house I'd lived in for 3 months but never belonged in. Patricia Vance and David Shin were still there, sitting at the dining room table with more documents spread out. Mrs. Ashford, Patricia said, standing. Are you leaving? I'm going home. For what it's worth, you did the right thing. The victims will get their money back. Benjamin has agreed to cooperate fully. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. It took 3 trips to load everything into my car. Benjamin stayed in the basement. Lily and Connor slept upstairs, innocent of the earthquake that had just shattered their family. I took one last look at the house, at the life I'd briefly been part of, and felt nothing but relief. The drive back to Willowcreek in the dark felt like emerging from a long tunnel. Each mile away from Maplewood Heights felt like a weight lifting from my shoulders. I pulled into my driveway at 10:30. My house looked exactly as I'd left it, small, modest, mine. Helen had clearly been maintaining the garden, the roses were pruned and the lawn was mowed. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air was stale from being closed up, but it smelled like home. Like books and lavender and the life I'd built for myself over decades. I collapsed on my floral couch, the same one that had looked so shabby in Benjamin's modern basement, and finally let myself cry. Not quiet tears this time, but great heaving sobs of grief and relief and exhaustion. I cried for the relationship with my son that was probably gone forever. I cried for Lily and Connor, who would grow up with a father facing criminal charges. I cried for the grandmother I wouldn't get to be to them anymore. But I also cried with relief. Relief at being home. Relief at not having to serve and clean and disappear to please people who didn't value me. Relief at choosing integrity over comfort. Eventually, the tears stopped. I made myself a cup of chamomile tea in my own kitchen, using my own favorite mug, and sat in my own chair looking at my own garden through my own window. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia Vance. Benjamin has signed the cooperation agreement. All stolen funds will be returned to victims within 30 days. Thank you again for your courage. Another text, this one from Richard Morrison. Mrs. Ashford, I wanted you to know that Margaret Weatherby called our office today. When we told her about the theft and that her money would be returned, she cried. She'd been worried she wouldn't be able to afford her medication next month. You saved her. You saved all of them. I read that message 3 times, letting it sink in. I'd saved them. Not Benjamin, not the firm, but me. By choosing truth over family loyalty, I'd protected 12 vulnerable people from financial ruin. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. Benjamin pled guilty to multiple counts of fraud and theft. Thanks to his cooperation and Morrison and Lloyd's intervention, he got 5 years probation instead of prison time, but he lost his accounting license permanently. Vanessa filed for divorce within a month, citing irreconcilable differences and refusing to let Benjamin see the children. The house in Maplewood Heights went on the market. The Mercedes and BMW were returned to the dealers. The country club membership was cancelled. Benjamin moved into a small apartment and got a job as a bookkeeper at a local hardware store, the only financial work he could do without his license. I didn't hear from him. Not a call, not a text, not a word. But I did hear from an unexpected source. 6 weeks after everything imploded, I got a letter addressed in a shaky hand. The return address was for Margaret Weatherby. Dear Mrs. Ashford, I hope you don't mind me writing to you. Mr. Morrison gave me your address and said you wouldn't object to hearing from me. I wanted to thank you for what you did. I don't know if you can understand what it means to be 78 years old and suddenly realize that the person you trusted with your life savings has stolen almost everything you have. When your husband dies and leaves you that money, it's not just money, it's security. It's the promise that you won't be a burden on your children. It's the difference between dignity and desperation in your final years. When Benjamin Ashford started stealing from me, he was stealing my husband's legacy. He was stealing my independence. He was stealing my future. You gave it all back to me. Not just the money, but the peace of mind. The ability to sleep at night. The knowledge that there are still people in this world who choose what's right even when it costs them everything. Mr. Morrison told me that Benjamin is your son. I cannot imagine how difficult it must have been to turn him in. But I want you to know that you saved my life. Literally. Without that money, I would have lost everything. You are a hero, Mrs. Ashford. Not the kind of hero who gets medals or recognition, but the kind who matters most, the kind who does the right thing when no one is watching and there's nothing to gain except a clear conscience. Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. With deep gratitude, Margaret Weatherby. You gave me exploitation. You and Vanessa treated me like hired help, not family. You expected me to sacrifice everything, my home, my friends, my life, to subsidize your criminal activities. You're my mother. You're supposed to support me. I'm supporting what's right. There's a difference. Benjamin's rage crumpled into something that looked like despair. He sank onto my bed, his head in his hands. They're going to file charges. Patricia said if I cooperate and return the money, they might advocate for probation instead of prison time. But I'll lose my license. My career. Everything. You should have thought of that before you stole from people who couldn't afford to lose their savings. He looked up at me with tears in his eyes. What am I supposed to tell Lily and Connor? That their grandmother destroyed their father's life? The accusation hung in the air between us. Tell them the truth, I said quietly. Tell them that their father made terrible choices and their grandmother chose to do the right thing instead of the easy thing. Tell them that sometimes people we love disappoint us, but that doesn't mean we stop holding them accountable. I'll never forgive you for this. I know. But I'll be able to live with myself. Can you say the same? He stood up, wiping his eyes. You need to leave. Tonight. I want you out of this house. I'm already packed. I gestured to my suitcases and boxes, already stacked by the door. Benjamin looked at them, then at me, and something in his expression shifted. Maybe he realized that I'd known this was coming. That I'd chosen justice even knowing it would cost me everything. The kids, he started. Tell them I had to go home to Willowcreek. Tell them I love them. Tell them whatever you want, Benjamin. But tell them something true for once. I picked up my first suitcase and walked past him, up the stairs, through the house I'd lived in for 3 months but never belonged in. Patricia Vance and David Shin were still there, sitting at the dining room table with more documents spread out. Mrs. Ashford, Patricia said, standing. Are you leaving? I'm going home. For what it's worth, you did the right thing. The victims will get their money back. Benjamin has agreed to cooperate fully. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. It took 3 trips to load everything into my car. Benjamin stayed in the basement. Lily and Connor slept upstairs, innocent of the earthquake that had just shattered their family. I took one last look at the house, at the life I'd briefly been part of, and felt nothing but relief. The drive back to Willowcreek in the dark felt like emerging from a long tunnel. Each mile away from Maplewood Heights felt like a weight lifting from my shoulders. I pulled into my driveway at 10:30. My house looked exactly as I'd left it, small, modest, mine. Helen had clearly been maintaining the garden, the roses were pruned and the lawn was mowed. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air was stale from being closed up, but it smelled like home. Like books and lavender and the life I'd built for myself over decades. I collapsed on my floral couch, the same one that had looked so shabby in Benjamin's modern basement, and finally let myself cry. Not quiet tears this time, but great heaving sobs of grief and relief and exhaustion. I cried for the relationship with my son that was probably gone forever. I cried for Lily and Connor, who would grow up with a father facing criminal charges. I cried for the grandmother I wouldn't get to be to them anymore. But I also cried with relief. Relief at being home. Relief at not having to serve and clean and disappear to please people who didn't value me. Relief at choosing integrity over comfort. Eventually, the tears stopped. I made myself a cup of chamomile tea in my own kitchen, using my own favorite mug, and sat in my own chair looking at my own garden through my own window. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia Vance. Benjamin has signed the cooperation agreement. All stolen funds will be returned to victims within 30 days. Thank you again for your courage. Another text, this one from Richard Morrison. Mrs. Ashford, I wanted you to know that Margaret Weatherby called our office today. When we told her about the theft and that her money would be returned, she cried. She'd been worried she wouldn't be able to afford her medication next month. You saved her. You saved all of them. I read that message 3 times, letting it sink in. I'd saved them. Not Benjamin, not the firm, but me. By choosing truth over family loyalty, I'd protected 12 vulnerable people from financial ruin. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. Benjamin pled guilty to multiple counts of fraud and theft. Thanks to his cooperation and Morrison and Lloyd's intervention, he got 5 years probation instead of prison time, but he lost his accounting license permanently. Vanessa filed for divorce within a month, citing irreconcilable differences and refusing to let Benjamin see the children. The house in Maplewood Heights went on the market. The Mercedes and BMW were returned to the dealers. The country club membership was cancelled. Benjamin moved into a small apartment and got a job as a bookkeeper at a local hardware store, the only financial work he could do without his license. I didn't hear from him. Not a call, not a text, not a word. But I did hear from an unexpected source. 6 weeks after everything imploded, I got a letter addressed in a shaky hand. The return address was for Margaret Weatherby. Dear Mrs. Ashford. I hope you don't mind me writing to you. Mr. Morrison gave me your address and said you wouldn't object to hearing from me. I wanted to thank you for what you did. I don't know if you can understand what it means to be 78 years old and suddenly realize that the person you trusted with your life savings has stolen almost everything you have. When your husband dies and leaves you that money, it's not just money, it's security. It's the promise that you won't be a burden on your children. It's the difference between dignity and desperation in your final years. When Benjamin Ashford started stealing from me, he was stealing my husband's legacy. He was stealing my independence. He was stealing my future. You gave it all back to me. Not just the money, but the peace of mind. The ability to sleep at night. The knowledge that there are still people in this world who choose what's right even when it costs them everything. Mr. Morrison told me that Benjamin is your son. I cannot imagine how difficult it must have been to turn him in. But I want you to know that you saved my life. Literally. Without that money, I would have lost everything. You are a hero, Mrs. Ashford. Not the kind of hero who gets medals or recognition, but the kind who matters most, the kind who does the right thing when no one is watching and there's nothing to gain except a clear conscience. Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. With deep gratitude, Margaret Weatherby. I read that letter until I had it memorized. And when people asked me if I regretted what I did, if I regretted losing my relationship with my son and grandchildren, I would think about Margaret Weatherby and know the answer was no. 3 months after moving back to Willowcreek, my life had returned to something resembling normal. I rejoined my book club, where Patricia and the others welcomed me back with open arms and careful questions about what had happened. I started yoga classes again, feeling my body slowly remember movements I'd thought I'd forgotten. I went back to volunteering at the literacy center, where adults learning to read reminded me that transformation was always possible. One Thursday morning, I was in my garden pruning roses when a car I didn't recognize pulled into my driveway. A woman got out, early 30s, professional attire, carrying a briefcase. Mrs. Ashford? I'm Jennifer Park. I'm a reporter with the Willowcreek Gazette. I was hoping I could talk to you about the Morrison and Lloyd case. My first instinct was to refuse. I'd avoided all media attention, declined all interviews. What happened with Benjamin was private family tragedy, not public entertainment. But Jennifer continued before I could dismiss her. I'm writing a story about financial elder abuse. About how common it is, how devastating it is, and how rarely victims speak up because the perpetrators are often family members or trusted professionals. I heard about what you did, how you reported your own son to protect his victims. That kind of courage is rare, Mrs. Ashford. Your story could help other people recognize abuse and find the strength to speak up. I thought about Margaret Weatherby. About Harold Shen and Patricia Dunmore and the other victims. About all the people out there who might be in similar situations, afraid to come forward because the abuser was someone they trusted. Come inside, I said. I'll make tea. The article Jennifer wrote appeared in the Gazette 3 weeks later. It was titled The Librarian Who Chose Justice, How One Woman's Courage Saved 12 Victims of Financial Abuse. She'd interviewed me extensively, but she'd also interviewed Margaret Weatherby, Richard Morrison, and Patricia Vance. She'd told the whole story, my exploitation by Benjamin and Vanessa, my investigation, my decision to come forward despite knowing it would destroy my relationship with my son. The article went viral. It was picked up by state newspapers, then national news outlets. Suddenly, my phone was ringing constantly with interview requests. I appeared on local news programs. A producer from a national morning show wanted to fly me to New York. I declined most of the attention. But I did agree to speak at a few community centers and senior centers about financial elder abuse, about recognizing the warning signs, about having the courage to report it even when the abuser is someone you love. At one of these talks, given at the Willowcreek Community Center, I saw a familiar face in the audience. Helen Peterson was there, of course, along with most of my book club. But in the back row, trying to be inconspicuous, was a young woman I recognized. Vanessa. After my talk, as people were filing out and several attendees were asking follow-up questions, Vanessa approached me hesitantly. Dorothy, she said quietly. Can we talk? Just for a minute? We stepped outside, into the parking lot where the autumn air was turning crisp and cold. I didn't know, Vanessa said, the words rushing out. About the theft. About what Benjamin was doing. I swear I didn't know. I studied her face, looking for signs of deception. But all I saw was exhaustion and something that might have been genuine remorse. I knew we were living beyond our means, she continued. I knew something wasn't right. But I convinced myself not to look too closely because I liked the lifestyle. The house, the cars, the schools. I liked feeling successful. She wrapped her arms around herself. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. For how I treated you. For how we treated you. You deserved better. Yes, I said simply. I did. The kids ask about you. Lily especially. She wants to know when she can see Grandma Dorothy again. My heart clenched. What do you tell her? I tell her the truth, that you had to move back to your own house, but that you love her very much. Vanessa paused. I know I have no right to ask this, but would you consider seeing them? Not at my house, not with Benjamin around. Just you and the kids, maybe for a few hours. They miss you. I wanted to say no. I wanted to protect myself from more heartache. But the image of Lily and Connor eating ice cream, their faces bright with happiness, made the decision for me. Saturday afternoons, I said. You can bring them here, to my house. 2 to 5. We'll have tea parties and read books and plant things in the garden. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. Thank you so much. This doesn't mean I forgive you for how you treated me. I know. But it's more than I deserve. That Saturday, Lily and Connor arrived at 2 o'clock sharp. They tumbled out of Vanessa's car and ran up my driveway, shouting my name. Grandma Dorothy. Your house is so pretty. Can we see your garden? Can we have tea parties? Mommy said we could have cookies. I caught them in a hug, feeling their small bodies pressed against mine, and realized that this moment, this joy, this connection, was worth all of it. Worth the pain of confronting Benjamin. Worth the loss of that relationship. Worth choosing truth over comfort. Because these children deserved a grandmother who showed them through her actions that integrity mattered. That doing the right thing mattered, even when it cost you everything. We had tea parties that afternoon. We planted bulbs in the garden that would bloom next spring. We read books curled up on my floral couch. And when Vanessa came to pick them up at 5, Lily hugged me tight and whispered, I'm glad you live here, Grandma Dorothy. This house is much better than our basement. After they left, I sat in my garden as the sun set, watching the roses I'd planted decades ago bloom in shades of pink and red and yellow. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia from book club. Still on for Thursday? We're reading that mystery you recommended. Another text from the Literacy Center. Dorothy, one of our students just passed his GED. He wanted me to thank you for your help. Another from Helen next door. Movie night tomorrow? I'm making my famous popcorn. I looked around at my small house, my modest garden, my simple life in Willowcreek. No luxury cars. No country club membership. No pretense of wealth or status. Just genuine connections. Real friends. Meaningful work. And most importantly, the ability to look at myself in the mirror and know that when it mattered most, I'd chosen integrity over comfort. I was 70 years old, and for the first time in my life, I was truly free. 6 months later, I received another letter. This one was from Benjamin. Mom. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to read this letter all the way through. But my therapist says I need to write it anyway, so here goes. You were right about everything. I was stealing from my clients. I was living a lie. I was using you. I was letting Vanessa treat you terribly because it was convenient for us. I justified it all by telling myself it was temporary, that I'd fix it, that I deserved the lifestyle we'd built. But the truth is, I became someone I don't recognize. Someone I'm ashamed of. Losing my license, losing Vanessa, losing the house and the cars and all of it, that's been hard. But the hardest part has been realizing that I lost myself somewhere along the way. And I lost you. I see the kids every other weekend now. Vanessa allows supervised visits. They talk about their Saturday afternoons with you. About tea parties and gardens and how Grandma Dorothy makes the best snacks. Lily told me that you're a hero, that you saved people who needed help. She's right. You are a hero. And I'm just trying to figure out how to be someone my children won't be ashamed of. I don't expect you to respond to this letter. I don't expect a relationship. I just wanted you to know that I understand now what you did and why you did it. And I'm grateful that at least one person in my life loved me enough to hold me accountable. Benjamin. I read that letter 3 times, feeling a complicated mix of emotions. Grief for the son I'd raised. Sadness for who he'd become. But also, tentatively, a tiny seed of hope for who he might become next. I didn't respond to the letter immediately. But I kept it, tucked into my journal next to Margaret Weatherby's letter, both of them reminders that doing the right thing, even when it costs you everything, creates ripples that extend far beyond what you can see. Now, as I sit here in my garden, watching Lily and Connor chase butterflies while Helen brings over lemonade and Patricia texts about our next book club meeting, I think about the question Vanessa asked me months ago. Do I regret it? Choosing justice over family loyalty. Choosing integrity over comfort. Choosing to speak up when it would have been so much easier to stay silent. Not for a single second. Because I learned something important: family isn't about blood. It's not about obligation or guilt or sacrificing yourself endlessly for people who don't value you. Family is about respect. About honesty. About showing up for each other in real, meaningful ways. And if I had to lose the family I was born into to find the family I chose, my friends, my community, my grandchildren on Saturday afternoons, then that was a trade worth making. I'm 70 years old. I live in a small house in Willowcreek. I have a pension and Social Security. I volunteer and do yoga and tend my garden. And I am finally, completely, truly free. Epilogue 1 year later. The Willowcreek Gazette ran a follow-up article on the 1-year anniversary of my story going public. Jennifer Park interviewed me again, this time in my garden, surrounded by the roses that had just won first prize at the county fair. What would you say to other people who suspect a family member of financial abuse but are afraid to speak up? She asked. I thought about Margaret Weatherby, about the 12 victims who got their money back, about Lily and Connor learning that integrity matters. I'd say that silence protects the perpetrator, not the victim. I'd say that real love sometimes means holding people accountable. And I'd say that you're stronger than you think you are. You just have to choose yourself for once. Choose your integrity. Choose what's right. The article included photos of me in my garden, at the Literacy Center, at book club with Patricia and the others. It showed a life rebuilt from the ground up, not perfect, but authentic. After it was published, I started receiving letters. Dozens of them, then hundreds. People from all over the country writing to tell me their own stories of family exploitation, of choosing silence over truth, of being trapped in situations they didn't know how to escape. One letter particularly stood out. It was from a woman named Susan, 68 years old, living in Oregon. Dear Mrs. Ashford. I read your story in the newspaper and I cried for an hour. Not sad tears, but tears of recognition and relief. My daughter and son-in-law moved me into their home 2 years ago after I broke my hip. They said it was just until I recovered, but I'm still here. I take care of their 3 children full-time while they both work. I cook, clean, do laundry, and manage the household. When I asked about moving back to my apartment, they said I couldn't manage on my own anymore. But I can manage. I know I can. I'm just afraid of being alone, afraid of losing my grandchildren, afraid of being seen as ungrateful. Your story gave me courage. Last week, I told my daughter I was moving back to my apartment. She got angry and said I was abandoning the family. But I held firm. I move out next month. Thank you for showing me that choosing myself isn't selfish. It's survival. With gratitude, Susan. I wrote back to Susan immediately, encouraging her, offering support, letting her know she was making the right choice. And I wrote back to as many of the other letter writers as I could, creating a network of people who'd chosen integrity over comfort, truth over convenience. The local community center asked me to start a support group for people dealing with family exploitation, financial, emotional, or otherwise. We met every Tuesday evening in the same room where my book club gathered on Thursdays. The group grew from 5 people to 15, then 30. We called it Reclaiming Ourselves. And we shared our stories, supported each other through difficult decisions, and celebrated every small victory of self-respect and dignity. One Tuesday evening, about 14 months after everything had happened, a new person showed up to the group. She sat in the back, head down, clearly nervous. When it came time for introductions, she looked up and I recognized her immediately. Vanessa. Hi, she said quietly. My name is Vanessa, and I think I need help understanding how I became someone who exploited my own family. After the meeting, she approached me hesitantly. I know I have no right to be here. This is your group, your space. But I've been in therapy for months, and my therapist suggested I might benefit from hearing other people's stories. From understanding the impact of what I did. I looked at this woman who'd made me feel invisible and worthless, who'd treated me like hired help, who demanded I clean bathrooms and sacrifice everything for her convenience. And I saw something I hadn't seen before, genuine remorse. Real desire to change. You can come back, I said. But you have to be honest. With yourself and with the group. No justifications, no excuses. Just truth. She nodded, tears in her eyes. Thank you, Dorothy. For everything. For being kind to the kids. For showing me what integrity actually looks like. Vanessa became a regular at the group. She shared her story, how she'd prioritized status and appearances over people, how she'd justified exploiting me by telling herself I should be grateful, how she'd lost herself in pursuing a lifestyle she couldn't afford and didn't actually want. Her presence was uncomfortable at first, for both of us. But over time, it became something else. Not friendship exactly, but a kind of mutual understanding. We were both learning how to be better people. How to choose authenticity over appearance. How to value relationships over status. Benjamin never came to the group. But according to Vanessa, he was doing his own work. He'd been in therapy for over a year. He'd taken a financial literacy course at the community college. He was slowly rebuilding his relationship with Lily and Connor, being honest with them about his mistakes in age-appropriate ways. He's ashamed to face you, Vanessa told me after one group meeting. He says he doesn't deserve forgiveness. He's probably right, I said. But that doesn't mean he can't become someone better. 2 years after I walked out of that house in Maplewood Heights, Lily had her 9th birthday party. Vanessa called to ask if I would come. It's at our new place, she said. A modest apartment in a good school district. Nothing fancy. But Lily specifically asked for you to be there. She says it's not a real birthday without Grandma Dorothy. I almost said no. The thought of seeing Benjamin again, of potentially facing his anger or resentment, made my stomach clench. But then I thought about Lily, sweet, perceptive Lily, and I knew I had to go. The apartment was small but cheerful, decorated with balloons and handmade birthday banners. A dozen kids ran around playing party games. And there, in the corner talking to another parent, was Benjamin. He looked different. Older, more tired, but somehow more genuine. He wore jeans and a simple button-down shirt, no expensive suit, no pretense. When he saw me, he froze. For a long moment, we just looked at each other. Then he walked over slowly. Mom, he said. Thank you for coming. It means everything to Lily. I came for her, I said, keeping my voice neutral. I know. He paused, struggling for words. I've wanted to reach out so many times. To apologize properly, not just in a letter. To tell you that you were right about everything. But I didn't know if you'd want to hear from me. I didn't, I admitted. For a long time, I didn't. But Benjamin, I'm not here to rehash the past or demand apologies. I'm here for Lily's birthday. Can we just be civil for her sake? Civil is more than I deserve. He looked down at his hands. I'm working at a nonprofit now. Financial literacy education for low-income families. Teaching people about predatory lending and financial abuse. The irony isn't lost on me. Is it real? I asked. Or is it just image rehabilitation? It's real. Or at least, I'm trying to make it real. He met my eyes. I'm trying to be someone my kids won't be ashamed of. Someone you wouldn't be ashamed of. Before I could respond, Lily came running over, her face lit up with joy. Grandma Dorothy. You came. Come see my cake. It's shaped like a book because I want to be a librarian like you when I grow up. She grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the kitchen, chattering excitedly about her party and her friends and the books she'd been reading. I let myself be pulled along, leaving Benjamin standing there, and focused entirely on this bright, beautiful child who'd chosen me as her role model. The party was lovely. Simple and genuine, full of real laughter and authentic joy. Connor showed me his soccer trophy. Lily introduced me to her friends as my amazing grandmother who saved people's lives. Vanessa thanked me quietly for coming and didn't try to force any deeper conversation. And Benjamin kept his distance, respecting my boundaries, but I caught him watching me occasionally with an expression that looked like regret mixed with hope. As I was leaving, Lily hugged me tight. Can I still come to your house on Saturdays? Please. I love our tea parties. Of course, sweetheart. Every Saturday, just like always. Promise you won't ever leave again? The question broke my heart a little. I promise I'll always be here for you, Lily. Always. But I won't live anywhere except my own home. That's important too, having your own space, your own life. You'll understand when you're older. She nodded seriously. Mommy says you taught her about being brave and honest. She says you're the strongest person she knows. I looked over at Vanessa, who was watching us from across the room. She gave me a small, sad smile and a nod of acknowledgement. Your mommy is learning to be strong too, I told Lily. We all are. Driving home to Willowcreek that evening, I thought about everything that had happened over the past 2 years. The exploitation, the investigation, the confrontation. The loss of relationships and the building of new ones. The pain and the growth. People often asked me if I would do it all again, knowing what it would cost. And the answer was always the same, yes. Because I'd learned that you can't build real relationships on lies and exploitation. You can't have genuine love without respect. And you can't live authentically if you're always making yourself smaller to fit into other people's expectations. I'd lost my son, but gained my self-respect. I'd lost the illusion of family harmony, but gained authentic connections with people who valued me. I'd lost the convenience of being needed, but gained the freedom of being chosen. And that trade was worth making every single time. 3 years later, final update. The garden was in full bloom when Benjamin showed up at my door on a Saturday afternoon. It had been over a year since Lily's birthday party, and we'd maintained a careful distance, cordial at family events, but nothing more. Mom, he said when I opened the door. Can we talk? Really talk? I almost said no. But something in his expression, a vulnerability I hadn't seen in years, made me step aside and let him in. We sat in my living room, the same room where I'd cried after leaving his house 3 years ago, where I'd read Margaret Weatherby's letter, where I'd slowly rebuilt my life piece by piece. I've been in therapy for 3 years now, Benjamin started. Individual therapy, group therapy, financial therapy. I've done everything I can to understand how I became someone who would steal from vulnerable people and exploit his own mother. And? I asked, my voice carefully neutral. And I finally understand something. I was so desperate to prove I was successful, to show that I'd made it, that I was better than my childhood circumstances, that I lost sight of what actually matters. Dad dying when I was young, growing up with less than the other kids, I told myself I'd never let my children feel that way. But instead of building real success, I built a house of cards. And when it started falling apart, I made it everyone else's problem. He leaned forward, his eyes red. You deserved better, Mom. You deserved a son who appreciated your sacrifices, who honored everything you gave up for us. Instead, you got a son who saw you as a convenience. Who let his wife treat you like hired help. Who was so consumed with maintaining appearances that he couldn't see he was destroying the people he claimed to love. I sat quietly, letting him speak. I can't take back what I did. I can't undo the theft or the exploitation or the years you lost. But I want you to know that I see it now. All of it. And I'm so sorry. The apology hung in the air between us. Part of me wanted to accept it immediately, to tell him everything was forgiven, to rebuild our relationship. But the stronger part of me, the part that had learned to value truth over comfort, knew that real healing required honesty. Benjamin, I appreciate your apology. I believe you're sincere. But an apology doesn't erase what happened. It doesn't give me back the time I lost or the relationship with my grandchildren that was damaged. It doesn't undo the trauma you caused to 12 elderly people who trusted you. I know. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking if someday, maybe, we could try to have some kind of relationship again. Not the way it was before, but something new. Something built on honesty instead of obligation. I thought about that. About whether I wanted Benjamin in my life again. About whether I could trust him not to hurt me again. I need time, I said finally. And I need to see sustained change, not just words. I need to know that you've really become someone different. That's fair. More than fair. He stood to leave, then paused. The kids talk about you constantly. Lily wants to study library science in college. Connor told his teacher that his grandmother is a hero who saved people. They're proud of you, Mom. And for what it's worth, so am I. After he left, I sat in my garden for a long time, thinking about forgiveness and redemption and second chances. I thought about Margaret Weatherby, who'd sent me a Christmas card every year since I'd helped recover her money. About the support group that now met twice a week and had helped over 100 people escape exploitation. About Lily and Connor, who were growing up knowing that their grandma Dorothy chose integrity over everything else. And I realized something important. My story wasn't about Benjamin. It wasn't about Vanessa or Morrison and Lloyd or even the 12 victims whose money was stolen. My story was about me. About choosing myself. About learning at 70 years old that it's never too late to reclaim your dignity, your autonomy, your life. It was about understanding that real strength isn't in sacrificing yourself endlessly for others. Real strength is in knowing your worth and refusing to accept less than you deserve. It was about teaching future generations, especially Lily, who wanted to be a librarian like me, that being kind doesn't mean being a doormat. That loving your family doesn't mean tolerating abuse. That sometimes the most loving thing you can do is hold people accountable. Now, as I sit here in my garden, surrounded by roses I planted with my own hands, in the house I chose to come back to, living the life I fought to reclaim, I know this truth. They told me I was useless except for babysitting. They told me I did nothing all day. They told me I should be grateful for the opportunity to serve. They were wrong about everything. I am Dorothy Ashford. I am 73 years old. I saved 12 people from financial ruin. I taught my grandchildren about integrity. I built a community of survivors who support each other. I reclaimed my life on my own terms. And I am finally, completely, triumphantly free. The end. To everyone watching this from around the world, I want to thank you for staying with me until the end. If you're in a situation where you're being exploited, where you feel invisible, where your family treats you like you're only valuable for what you can do for them, please know this: you deserve better. You are strong enough to choose yourself. And it's never too late to reclaim your life. Comment below with the country you're watching from, and tell me, what would you have done in Dorothy's situation? Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing what's right? I'd love to hear your stories. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, you are never too old to start over. You are never too old to choose freedom.